Good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I am Georgia Christa, Tax Event Coordinator, and it's my pleasure to see how many of you are present on this evening Tax Talk. A big thank you to the panelists for joining this open table discussion, which is, from our knowledge, the first occasion for all the founders of the traditional architecture summer school in Europe mostly to be part of the collective discussion. I have a few hot topics. We have a few hot topics to discuss and hopefully some conclusion to be drawn along with the presentation of each summer school. But in my view, this is more than a discussion, but in fact a celebration of this continuously growing phenomenon and the real proof of the momentum that the traditional architecture is building these days. And on this uplifting note, I will hand over to Mark Wilson-Jones, who will moderate the discussion, but not before reminding you that, as usual, the discussions will have questions and answer session after the talk. And if you have questions during the talk, please type your questions on the message bar at the bottom of the screen. And after the talk, I will invite you to unmute your microphone and ask your questions directly. So Mark, up to you, please.
Thank you very much, Georgia. That's a great, very judicious introduction, also covering those tricky technical details, which is always good to get out the way. So thank you for that. And I should tell everyone that actually Georgia's rather instrumental to this whole event. And after, I think it was, actually, I wasn't there. This was the annual general meeting of TAG. The scandalous fact that the chairman was not present. So this was last June, and I think from what I've heard is that Robert Adam, gave a sort of observation about how wonderful it was that all these schools were happening, and then Georgia, who also was then involved in the Utrecht school, and then reviewing the Bruges one, and actually all these people from Utrecht turned up in Bruges on a bus. This is last summer. And so then I myself was involved in the Cambridge school first the year before, and then also last year. And the Bruges one, that was lovely as well. And so there's been other people from TAG involved with it, Hugh Petter, Francis Terry, and I'm now going to forget people. This is the problem. There's actually been quite a lot of us. And of course, Tiffany is there, Tiffany Abernathy on screen. So there's been quite a few of us who have been sort of involved in one way or other. And Georgia really thought, this is great. We must pull all this together. And so I want to thank a big thank you to Georgia for doing this, because you can imagine it's a bit like herding cats. You have all these people in different countries, and they, everyone's got different agendas and interests. So that's quite a feat. So anyway, this is the whole thing really. I think Georgia used the word celebration. This is really a bit of a celebration, because there's been these spontaneous movements and spontaneous momentum happening. And then we're now becoming aware that there's really quite a lot of it around the world, whether in the UK and Europe. And I'll come on to the States in a moment, because we're missing, let's say, the United States of America is the sort of large absentee, but that's actually quite deliberate, because otherwise we wouldn't have the time to discuss everything. So the sort of concept of today is really bringing people together, celebrating this momentum, sharing information and ideas and know-how, and discussing just a few topics, because obviously there's lots we could discuss, and we won't really have the time to do so. At this point, the notes fly off in all directions. So I think the other thing I wanted to say is really that what's great about all this is that it's so spontaneous. In other words, we have an older generation that are really interested in conveying their knowledge to the next generation that are going to move on the movement, the whole cause. And there's this will to actually impart information, knowledge, know-how, insights, and there's a thirst from younger people spontaneously getting say momentum from different parts of the world, who want to acquire this knowledge, this insight, imagination, illumination, all all the eyes, if you like. So I think that's really important, this sort of meshing of the generations in different formats and different ways. So I think, I say, the notable exception here is the US of A, and we're quite aware in Europe in that we have no accreditation mechanism at the moment. These are summer schools that have got an educational mission, but no means of giving a qualification. The one exception would be in Britain anyway, is the University at Kingston, where Timothy Smith and Jonathan Taylor, one or perhaps both of whom will be in the audience, have a design studio part of the master's program there. So at least there's a partial route, but otherwise we don't have the possibility of accreditation. Whereas in the States, there is a completely different situation. You have the Institute of for the Classical Art and Architecture in New York, have been doing summer schools for a long time, and then you have the University of Notre Dame, then followed by others who are actually able to give accreditation to students who are then going to be able to go on and enter the profession on, if you like, a legitimate, normal route. And we don't have that over in Europe. So we're very much looking to the States. So our American colleagues are not directly involved, but they have actually, they're leading the way in this. And so I think that's very important to acknowledge. And otherwise, I think we're all probably have in mind the Prince of Wales summer school back in the institute back in the 90s, which was trying to push in the same direction, but met, let's say, how should we put it tactfully, some institutional resistance from the architectural establishment. So that was also very important. But anyway, I don't want to go over any, if you like, any more history. And I think that suffices just to get us going. And with that, I'll hand over to what should be an electrically swift sequence of 8 summer schools introduction. Each of these 8 summer schools has just got 3 or 4 PowerPoint slides. And hopefully, if the technology allows us, we're going to go smoothly into the first of these, which is, there you can see the summer school in classical architecture at the University of Cambridge under the Centre for the Study of Classical Architecture. And with that, over to you, Frank Salmon.
Thank you very much indeed, Mark, and I'll try to be as brief as I can. Good evening, everybody. It's very nice to be with you. So yes, the summer school in classical architecture that we run is at the Axon Johnson Centre for the Study of Classical Architecture, which is an academic research institute based at Cambridge, but one that was set up in 2021, so quite recently, with a specific intention. It would run summer schools, building in fact out of the tradition of summer schools set up by that foundation by Robert Adam at their Engelsberg World Heritage Site in Sweden. So we're building on that tradition. It was founded, the centre, and therefore the summer school, by myself, working with John Simpson, and very fortuitously with the then head of the history of the architecture department at Cambridge, Professor James Campbell. And I would also lead from that into saying, as Mark has just said, that this was an unusual step in the UK because with the exception of our valiant colleagues at Kingston, it's almost impossible to study any classical architecture professionally or in an educational context in this country, in the UK. And that was really the primary need for our summer school, I think, that like everybody, I imagine, in this meeting, we believe that traditional architecture, classical in our case, is best understood, and design is best understood through making, through the process of making. But we went a stage further as well, because as we're an academic centre, we also believe in the importance of history and the understanding of design and where ideas have come from. And so our centre studies not just design, but also the history of classical architecture. And we do that through field visits, through lecture-based, seminar-based teaching, and through visits to archives to look at drawings and that sort of thing as well. Can we move on? Thank you. So in terms of duration and where we're based, most of the course, which is a 5-week course, takes place in Cambridge, based at Downing College, which some of you may know is a locus classicus really for classical architecture, founded in the 18th century and substantially added to by Quinlan and Francis Terry at the end of the 20th century. So that's where we're based. But we also work at Engelsberg, as the caption says here. We spend a week there. You see the sorts of numbers. Thank you very much. Yes, you see also the countries from which our students are coming at the moment. And finally, just a couple of encomiums about the program. One from a student explaining what he gained from it. That's where we're on now, that slide. Thank you very much indeed, Edward. And he's been working with Adam Architecture subsequent to coming on our summer program. And the final slide I have there is from Ross Sharp, director of Yangu Architects, who sent one of their students to us, and Ross there talks about what the student gained from the program and how he came back to practice much improved as a designer in the classical language. So I think I probably had my 2 minutes. The slides were flying fast. That's a brief whistle-stop tour of what we're trying to achieve in Cambridge.
Thank you, Frank. Right, over, I believe, to, yes, it's going to be Nadia and perhaps Noé. I don't...
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening, and thank you, TAG, for organizing this very important event. And I will speak of 2 summer schools, actually, which Nadia will describe in more details. First one is the Bruges Summer School. It has been running since now 2 editions. This will be the 3rd edition of the Bruges Summer School. It's 5 weeks to train students in architecture and crafts. We have a very interesting and unique tradition of Flemish Gothic in Bruges, with a very special history in the 19th century of Neo-Gothic architecture, and some stuff that and very good craftsmen that needs to be studied, and that's what we do for 5 weeks. And we have a new summer school in Alsace, which we launched, so in France, Eastern France, in a region that has kept its built identity. Alsace is very proud of its traditional vernacular houses. And this summer school is more modest in size. It will be 2 weeks, less student than in Bruges. It's a partnership with INTBAU Germany and INTBAU France, the 2 chapters. And we, as the Association La Table Ronde d'Architecture, also represent INTBAU Belgium, so that 3 chapters of INTBAU coming together to organize this event. So perhaps, Nadia, you want to say a bit more about the Bruges and Alsace schools?
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you again, Mark and Georgia, for organizing this. I'm just adding that the Bruges Summer School and the Alsace Summer School both are also partnership with the cities. So with the cities of Bruges and with the city of Bar, where the students of the Alsace Summer School will stay, which is in the north part of Alsace. So here, I mean, it's just some pictures, so you have an idea of what we do. Measure drawing, they will do lots of visits, study visits. It's quite local, but they will also visit other cities or village around. They will do projects. They will have to present their project in front of the city, in front of the inhabitants. And also we had a collaboration with the summer school of Utrecht last year. And so the student meets during a great festivity. And so you see the different, the different environment the students are working in. So library, but also classes and outside, inside, yeah. And then during the last week, so the second week of the Alsace Summer School, but also the last week of the Bruges Summer School is really dedicated to craft. During the Bruges Summer School, we do much more craft, but they will do stonework, woodwork this year also, plaster work. They will do lots of visits of craftsman workshop to understand how they work, but also so that they are able to use those materials within their architecture. And so they will do like lots of different projects related to their bigger project that they are presenting during the summer school. So in Alsace also they will present their work during this in front of the city, and same for Bruges. Each student will have to present a project in front of the city. I don't know if it's been too quick or if I'm in time.
Perfect, perfect, Nadia. That's absolutely fine, and that's great.
And I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure we can say much more with the question. And I mean, everything is on the website also. So if there is students, I really push you to go on the website and see all those information. And also we are sharing all the picture of the previous summer schools. And I think it's the case for most summer schools that are present today. Really, yeah, go on the website.
No, thank you, Nadia. And I think probably as we go through, you know, for each summer school, we can think of its sort of particular characteristics. And for example, it's coming to my mind that you actually take school children, which is amazing. I thought it was so incredible what they could achieve. But let's go on to the next one, and you know, everyone just store up their comments and questions for later. So to Utrecht.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, and thank you, Georgia, for organizing this event. So yeah, Let's Build a Beautiful City is our Dutch summer school, which the idea started in 2021, where we came together on an INTBAU excursion to Heulebrug, and where all the organizing members were there already. And we decided to go for it. And in 2022, we had our first edition. So this is, you see the team here on our first slide. And we focus with our summer school, a little bit on classical architecture, traditional architecture, and urbanism in the Netherlands, because of course there is very little opportunity to learn this here. Here you see a bit of our team. We are of course focused a bit more on urbanism, I think, like perhaps the Spanish summer school. And that's also where we got our name, Let's Build a Beautiful City, to really try and teach traditional Dutch urbanism, which is something that's kind of lost. So next slide, please. So our summer school has a duration of 3 weeks, happening normally late July, early August. And we have a bit more students, so 24 students, but we are very open. Like, we're not only limited to architects, but we try to offer this to as many people as possible. And we have a small but strong core team, which is now also being expanded with former students. So there's more people getting activated, you could say. And we had a very rich set of lecturers, both internationally and Dutch, which we're really happy with. So I think this is all it. Yeah. Sorry. So we have we now focus on this area in Utrecht, actually last year, to design, which is kind of a strip where they want to build a very dense area called the Merwede Kanaalzone, for which they designed a kind of a counter proposal. And kind of the success stories I think are most interesting. So we really see that some of the lives of our students are being transformed, that they really have different insights, make new friends, and we feel like some of them, like the course of their life has been changed, and that's really powerful. Of course, they expand their network, we expand our network. Some of our students start activities here and there. We got some local traction, showing our designs in the municipality of Utrecht, and we tried to also expand that with new expositions. And of course, it's the students form a rich source of talent for INTBAU and other organizations. So we are really focused on Dutch traditional urbanism. I think that's it.
Thank you, Ruben. That was great. So let's roll on forward.
Yes.
Okay. So
Alejandro,
yes, we've got a chorus there, Georgia. We should practice that in the future.
Good evening, and thanks for inviting us too. About our program, our Iberian Traditional Architecture Summer School. It's something specific from it is that every year is in a different location. So 1 year is in Portugal, 1 year in Spain. This program, we started organizing it in 2014. So there have been many editions already in Spain and Portugal. Every time we work also with a very different character, because these are normally, we choose places with a strong identity. And basically the program is 2 weeks. The first week is dedicated to study the place, which is also like the focus of this program. And then the way we do it is that basically we go outside and visit places and draw streets, draw public spaces, analyzing building types, analyzing street sections, building a catalog of local building patterns. And with all this knowledge, we try to also complement it with lectures by local experts. We invite also masters in different traditional building trades. And normally we have lectures on history of the place, on ethnology, on geology, landscape. So we have an understanding of the place as good as possible. We have international faculty and an international group of students. Depending on the place, we normally can host from 20 to 30, more or less. And we normally can accept only part of the applications we have. And we try to build a group which is as varied as possible, combining students of architecture with practitioners in their early years of architecture. And well, you see also in the previous slide that in the second week we do a design project, which is normally architecture and urbanism, and we work all together divided in groups in a single project, which responds normally to the challenges which are proposed by the municipality hosting the event. And basically that's it. We have an exhibition by the end with the local community, which is basically the end of it. And well, we try, as the rest of the speakers already pointed out, we try to spread a way of doing architecture and designing architecture that is normally not taught in most schools.
Thank you so much, Alejandro. That was brilliant, absolutely to time. So that's wonderful. And we move on to Create Streets now, and hopefully it'll be Robert who will be with us. And I think Nicholas Boy-Smith can't be with us. He had hoped to be.
He's traveling on a train, and he sends his apologies. But thank you very much for having us. It's a pleasure to be here among this group of people. So yeah, a lot of people who will know Create Streets will know that we've been doing a lot of research, a lot of policy for a good 10 years. I think actually we had our 10-year anniversary last year. And we founded a summer school last year. Last year was the first year that we did it, and it was just urban design last year. And I think compared to some of the schools here, it was a bit shorter, 3.5 days, but we were really targeting people who weren't necessarily architects or architecture students. Maybe next slide at this point. But we wanted to put into practice some of the things that we've been learning in our work for the past 10 years, putting that research into education. We do a lot of master plans, a lot of urban design, and it's almost like a feedback loop. The things that we learn on our projects, we then put into research and vice versa. And so that school is kind of a way of giving back and teaching people the sort of things that we've been learning in our work. Next slide, please. And last year, it was just an urban design school, which we ran with James Armitage Architects. Robert Adam came to speak, and hopefully we'll be speaking again this year. And we'll also be expanding into architecture. So it'll now be 6 days, targeting still kind of a very wide mix of people. And we had architects, planners, lighting designers, lots of developers. And actually next year, one of the major UK developers is thinking of funding a couple of places for students so that they can kind of learn the basics of urban design and architecture, and hopefully lift the quality of sort of generic house building in the UK. So yeah, we're very excited about expanding this year, and hopefully expanding into further sort of modules in years to come.
Thank you very much, Robert. That was great. And I think we had a kind of, the name Robert Adam, I think, came up there. So we've got a very easy introduction into the next speaker.
All right, I'm on now, so that's a good segue. Yeah, this is the first time. This is the first time this course is going to be run. It grew out of another course called a Classical Design Workshop, which Oxford University Department for Continuing Education asked me to do. It's a part-time course, And none of the students at the end of that said, could we have more, please? And so I approached the university with TAG. Actually, if TAG hadn't supported it, this would not have happened. It's got a fancy name, which is meant to attract people, but actually the subject is composition and symbolism. It's a one-week course, one-week residential course. This is actually what we're looking at. This slide is some of the outcome of our 10 half days for the classical design workshop, which we're running again this year, provided enough people join up, and please join up if you haven't. And I'll just take the next slide, which is my last slide. This 1 week course, we deal with composition. I show at the top here, because we all think of this as just bilateral symmetry. I mean, classical architecture is a great deal more than that, and all designers have to compose. I mean, we've got Craig Hamilton speaking, one of our speakers on composition, and Nicholas Temple speaking about symbolism. It's 12 people allowed. Actually, they've let one extra in by mistake. It's actually full, but there is a waiting list. I understand actually that a number of people were instructed to come to it by University of Notre Dame. That was news to me. I'd like to think it's unique. I think the idea of composition as composition, which is what we all do, is interesting and very complex. And I think we can all learn from this. And symbolism is something we don't really discuss a lot, but it's there to be had. It's a huge open book. I just show some other interesting examples of symbolism here, just to whet everybody's appetite. So we'll see how it goes this year, and let's hope it goes well. And if it goes well, we will do it again and again. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Again and again, I like that final line. So hopefully that will run through everyone else's talks as well. So as you can see, we're in Mexico now, and this is actually, I should just say that it's evidence, or one aspect of the kind of proliferation that happened, because when Georgia and I and others at TAG, we started talking about it, we kind of assumed we'd have relatively few ingredients, let's say, with Europe and UK, and then it sort of expanded, and so we haven't got the whole world clearly, but we do have a couple of interesting and sort of relevant new summer schools that are from different parts of the world that are also connected with INTBAU, and that's very important. I haven't mentioned INTBAU before. The names come up, but this is really an important grouping that their endorsements and their support is absolutely vital to so many of you. So over to INTBAU Mexico.
Yes, hello.
And this is Flavio. Sorry, didn't introduce you properly, but go right ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Good evening, and I would like to thank Georgia for having invited me to this talk, in which I will present to you very briefly the summer school that INTBAU Mexico is organizing. As you can see in the background of this slide, there's the great Mayan pyramid of Chichen Itza, which we will go and see during the summer school. Can I see the next slide, please? Thank you. Well, the summer school is located in a small town of Izamal in the Yucatán Peninsula. It was built and designed by Franciscan monks in the 1500s and has remained virtually unchanged 500 years after. It was built with local materials and also, of course, with local indigenous building techniques, and mixed with the European and Franciscan knowledge of classical architecture. It created a town that is very sustainable, very resistant, and also very attractive. It was the first time that a town in Mexico received a UNESCO World Heritage status. Can I see the next slide, please? Unfortunately, in the 21st century now, we have a couple of issues. We have a housing crisis. People are building with artificial materials and also indiscriminately in urban sprawl. And of course, that impacts the environment and also the status of the UNESCO World Heritage Site. Next slide, please. So in our summer school, we will have 2 weeks where we will teach in Spanish and English the local traditions of building and also of urbanism that can help ameliorate the present situation, giving affordable and sustainable housing and also affordable and sustainable urban expansion. I think next slide, please. These are our dates. So from June 24 to July the 7th, we'll give the summer school in Izamal. If you want more information, please send us a message through our social media accounts or by visiting the INTBAUmexico.com website. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Flavio. And just those slides, just a wonderful reminder to anyone who needs it that how adaptable and flexible and supple the traditional languages are, the traditional language of classicism in particular, but all traditions have this ability to flex according to their context. So wonderful to see that happening over in Mexico. And so I think it's now we're going to the other part of the world, if there isn't, there's lots of other parts of the world, but we're going further, further in the other direction from Great Britain at any rate, over to Australia. And we have Alex of INTBAU, and we'll be hearing about this. This is our last mini introduction.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, everyone. And hello from the other side of the world in Australia. So the Enduring Design Masterclass is Australia's version of the European summer schools, but it's held for obvious temperature-related reasons in the Australian winter. So the program began in 2020 as a partnership between the Prince's Trust Australia, INTBAU Australia, and the University of Queensland, and is somewhat unique among the INTBAU summer schools in that it's one of the only ones that's formally accredited as part of a Master of Architecture or a professional postgraduate degree, which is required to become a registered architect in Australia. So next slide, please. It's the first program of its kind in Australia and aims to reconnect architecture students with traditional design and trade skills and really equip them with a strong, practical, and most importantly, a very hands-on grounding in the traditional building techniques and materials of Australia. So in the program, students are required to learn not only about traditional design skills, but actually build things to create a tangible outcome, such as a stone molding, traditional mortise and tenon joint, or an indigenous rainforest shelter, as you can see there. For many of our students, it's the first time they've used a chisel or a hammer. And it's always really fantastic to see the hitherto desk-bound architecture students nervous and tentative at the beginning of the program, and then inspired, absolutely exhausted, and covered in stone dust or wood shavings over a pint at the end. Next slide, please. On top of the traditional trades that we teach, and you can see some of them there, we also provide an introduction to the theory and practice of traditional architecture through drawing. Next slide again, please. So students learn the principles of classical architecture by learning to draw heritage buildings and also how to draft the orders and apply them. I believe it might be the first time the classical orders have been taught in an Australian tertiary environment as anything other than a sort of historical curiosity in more than a generation. And it's our hope that the theory that the students learn about material properties and traditional culture will stay with them for life and influence the Australian building industry for generations to come. And that's the word from Australia.
Thank you so much, Alex. Well, and thank you to all of you, of the speakers, because we're almost a minute ahead of schedule, which makes Georgia and I extremely happy. and probably many of you in the audience as well. We don't want to drag on all night. So at this point, we can move over to the discussion, and it's really a free-for-all. I certainly don't want to speak at all, or certainly I've got no intention of that, except I might have to fill in a gap if people don't speak, which I think is rather unlikely. So the topics we want to try and get through are, first of all, ambition and growth and what people hope for, and the issue of accreditation. And we just heard from Alex there that there is at least that possibility in Australia. I mentioned at the beginning, we have the University of Kingston, where there's at least part of the master's program that is based on tradition and classicism. And then, of course, in the States, there are various programs. So this is a very important issue of how the students that come to these summer schools, and a lot more who don't manage to, for whatever reason, actually can find a path through to accreditation, because it's not such a comfortable thing. Although some people do it, they go their own way, they plow their own furrow towards their career. And of course, you don't have to be accredited to be able to be a very fine architect. And with the sort of historian's perspective, of course, we know that before universities started teaching architecture, there were wonderful architects who didn't have university educations. So we know we have to have a little dose of humility, those of us involved in academia and so on, and actually think, well, we are not as essential as we would like to be. But the fact remains that many people would be worried about not having accreditation. So this is an important topic. So anyway, the first one is, say, ambition and accreditation. Then we move on to craft, and we've seen already we have different summer schools, some of whom put more emphasis onto urbanism, others onto history, others onto craft. So that will be, we'll just have a small time for discussing the issues of welding craft into the summer schools. Then we have the topic of visibility, basically, which is very important for all of us. And allied to that, then recruitment. So these are kind of important issues, always looking towards the future and how we go forward. And so at this point, I think I said to John Simpson, that is, that at 7:40, we would have him come in and speak to us about accreditation, at least in the UK context, because we don't want to keep John any longer, because he's heading off to the States tomorrow. So John, if you are there, which I hope you are, would you like to take the floor at this point?
Yes, I don't know whether I can give you too much on accreditation, apart from telling you what our ambitions are at the CSCA Summer School for that. Because to some extent, I have tried to set up a school at under the auspices of the University of Buckingham. And to some extent, what happened is the CSA summer school has grown out of that. Because in a sense, that was still a summer school, and it was still very much something which stood alone. It was studio-based, and did have a sort of urban design bias. But as a practicing architect, my objective has always been to develop a pathway for students interested in traditional classical architecture to be able to achieve their qualification and enter the profession studying their chosen subject, and not having to divert 5 years of their life to something they didn't like to do, or perhaps even detested doing. So the reason the program that I started at Buckingham was moved over to Cambridge once the CSA was set up was to widen the scope of the program to include a greater academic input alongside the studio work in the history and theory of architecture, which I think is essential, as you've just said, to the understanding of the classical tradition and in actually having a full-rounded education. The thing is, though, that although our summer school has proved, I suppose, popular and inspiring to the students, and to some extent the standard of work that we've achieved, I think, has exceeded all expectations. At the end of every summer school, many of the students have expressed their extreme frustration, I think I can put it that way, having had their appetite sort of whet and their enthusiasm fired, that there's no obvious route for them, open to them, that leads to qualification as professionals. And except, of course, by relocating to the US for a short period of time and going to one of the institutions there, such as Notre Dame. And that is, many people have done that, and it's a direction that I today recommend to anybody who wants to do that. But others prefer to work for one of the growing number of traditional practices in this country and elsewhere. And they, however, are left, having done that and perhaps worked for many years and gained quite a lot of experience, with no means of getting their professional accreditation, just to practice in their own right. So we see a possible extended role for the CSCA to expand the summer school program, which with its sort of mix of practical, studio and academic tuition, using the facilities at Cambridge and at Engelsberg, as Frank explained, could operate alongside a group of participating practices to provide an apprenticeship type route towards qualification. We envisage that the summer school could be expanded to perhaps provide 2 or more 5-week summer schools, providing the more formal element of the teaching and designed to complement the experience that students get in practice. It would coordinate, ensure that what the students get is a coordinated, combined training that covers all the general criteria, GC 1 to 11, set by the ARB for Part 2 accreditation. I mean, the program in the first instance would be offered to students who have decided to switch to classical architecture, but have already completed 3 years at an undergraduate level at a School of Architecture. This could be a conventional school in the UK, or perhaps have achieved their Part 1 accreditation from a school abroad, and they've got the equivalent qualification. So once they're accepted, they would attend the CSA summer school, or one of the CSA summer schools to start with, and then placed for 3 or 4 years with a participating classical practice. And during this period, they would be employed by their practice and would attend subsequent summer schools the following years. How to do this? Well, many schools already offer apprenticeship programs, including Cambridge University. But none of them do so in the classical tradition. But there's no point actually trying to reinvent something or reinvent the wheel all over again. So we're looking at a way of actually introducing a small cohort into an existing apprenticeship program, which would create a classical traditional strand where the classical input is provided by the CSCA. And we're currently at early stages, but well placed to actually do something like this. So that's what we're trying to do. I mean, a lot of trying to set up a School of Architecture from scratch, it takes a lot of effort and takes a lot of coordination, but it is possible, and it is possible to do. But I see that it won't be long before most of the schools of architecture will be either switching to a strand which actually teaches the classical tradition, or switching right over. So to try and set something up from scratch is probably unnecessary. And I feel quite strongly that an apprenticeship type training, which is much more hands-on, where you get to feel the architecture, you get to feel the materials, you get experience of how to build, etc., all at the very beginning, gives you a much better basis and a much better education than sitting for 5 years in a university. So that's my introduction.
Thank you, John. That was masterful. So we have a very good picture, at least for the UK scene there. And personally, I think it's very realistic in the sense that, particularly if you think, well, 3 years, students, a lot of these kind of students will have done 3 years anyway, and they'd have taken some time. The first year often goes past in a buzz of socializing and just sort of finding your feet as an adult, whatever kind of education you do. And then by the time you do your 3 years, you might, if you're in the, let's say at the moment, a minority of students then find themselves questioning what they're taught, they would then be ready to move over to this apprentice model in the kind of, with the classical emphasis. So I think it's a very good strategy. Now, have any kind of observations or questions from either people in the UK, other people in the UK, or over in Europe?
I can make an observation, if I may. We did look into this at Engelsberg at one stage, and there's two things about this. One is that from those early schools, which I think were the Prince's Institutes, it was then, the Prince's Foundation, and also I think in Spain had early schools, is that these things have grown exponentially. I think some of them have grown out of the Engelsberg school and so on. The issue we looked into was how could we manage this on an international basis, and actually I have to say we failed. Partly because we've tried to work it on a module system. If you have a series of different courses running, can you actually bring them together as a series of modules? In continental Europe, there's a Bologna system of modules, which we can recognize from one to another. Doesn't quite work in the UK, I don't think. I think there's a means of managing it. But certainly what John's been talking about is certainly, if I can manage out the UK context, it'd be very good. It would be very nice if, given the fact that we are a number of people speaking internationally here, if we could draw this together on an international basis as well. But that does get quite complicated, because I think Alejandro can speak about the complexities of Spanish universities and getting anything in there. I only make that as a discussion point because I think what John has said is very good and very important, and what one should try and do. It would be great if we could actually manage this on an international basis, because we are sitting here on as an international group.
Can I just jump in? And I think Timothy Smith had a question, if I can bring him in.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I couldn't... Am I unmuted? Yes, I couldn't find how to raise my...
We can hear you, Timothy. So
great, thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to reiterate that there is already an RIBA professionally accredited Part 2 course at Kingston. And while we are one of 8 design studios, Jonathan and I teaching the classical studio, if a student comes to Kingston and studies in our studio for 2 years running, and chooses to write on a traditional classical subject for their dissertation, they have essentially got a traditional classical Part 2. And I'm keen that as many people know that's possible, because they've been banging on about it for about 12 years, and it seems to be taking a while to get through. So it's also a fraction of the price of the American courses. So particularly for anyone in Europe and obviously the UK, I would be thrilled if more people come our way. The word's slowly getting out. We're getting a couple of students a year who are coming to Kingston for their Part 2 specifically because they want this 2 years of classicism. But there must be more people out there who we're struggling to reach, because as one studio in a mainstream course, it's quite hard to find us. There's not a separate button on Kingston's website to say, I want to do the classicism. You have to apply for the MArch. And, if you Google classical studio, Kingston, you'd probably find us, but you'd need to be looking at Kingston already. So it's hard for us to market ourselves independently. And partly out of that, the plan we've got over, I mean, the department's behind us, but we're stymied at the moment by the ARB changing the way it operates accreditation, is that we want to set up a pathway course. So it'd essentially be exactly the same MArch RIBA Part 2 course, which has been accredited for decades. But then after the certificate title, it would say brackets, contemporary traditions or something, whatever we choose to call it. And one of the modules would be very marginally adjusted to recognize the fact that a student was on the traditional course. And that is something that would have its own button on an applications page at Kingston, and would be very easy to set up. Jonathan and I already have permanent contracts there. There's no risk of setting up new studios, employing new staff, and we're confident we could do the same thing in the BA. Basically, the students would sit in a lot of the same classes as all the others and really just do the separate design studio. And also very keen that we retain the current structure, because I think it's very valuable for students to be able to do a year with our studio, but then continue their studies in another more sort of mainstream or orthodox studio. They go away with a knowledge of the orders and understanding of tradition, and the whole question of tradition versus modern has been somewhat softened by that experience, and I think that's really important. So the more diverse approaches we have, from the fully traditional Notre Dame to the part traditional, part modern Catholic University of America, where we teach too, Kingston, very similar, to ideas like those that John has just described, with getting in on the apprentice route, which is going to be more and more popular for applicants. I think the more diversity we've got, the better. And I also think it's very good not to be completely siloed or completely segregated from the more orthodox route to becoming an architect.
Thank you, Timothy. I think those are all really good points. If I may, just a couple of bits of translation for non-UK people. The BA, generally it's bachelor's, and this ARB is the Architects Registration Board. It's actually the sort of legal, if you want your title as architect, that's you need to get your qualifications through the Architects Registration Board. A lot of people outside the UK think of the RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects, as, if you like, the gatekeeper, but actually it's the Architects Registration Board. And without wishing to do the RIBA down, although some people might, we could call that essentially a club that you can opt to join. But if you want your title as an architect, you have to go through the ARB. So Timothy, those are all valuable points, and of course we should do more to get the Kingston visibility. But at least this little window is part of that. And so
thank you. Yes, I mean, what would be hugely helpful is if we could have 10 or 15, good 10 or 15 students coming specifically for what we want and expressing that at interview. It would make it much easier to set up these splinter pathway courses. So right. It's bums on seats and money that talks.
We'll get the word
universities.
out. Everyone in this in the audience is mandated to send out to their networks some information about Kingston and with that message. Mm-hmm. So can we just have some questions at this point on this theme? Because in sort of 5 minutes or so, we're supposed to, at any rate, go over to the next topic. But obviously we don't have to keep so accurately to the timepiece. So please I think at this point, Edward or Georgia could have a look at the questions coming in and maybe select some that are on topic.
Someone has asked about funding to go to Kingston. I think it is. Had hoped to go to Kingston.
Sorry, Edward, to talk over you, but can we direct? I think funding and all that is so difficult to get into. We could go down rabbit holes on funding, as I tried to say at the beginning. I think we should keep that off topic, and maybe anyone who's interested, could send us messages or contact Timothy, or this goes for all of us, I think, all of the schools, because we could really spend time on material, I think, that isn't actually that relevant. As soon as someone's interested, contact us or contact the others for this kind of information. Sorry, Edward, to be brutal. Can we have another question? Not about funding.
I wanted to know more if Nadia did any progress, because I knew that she was trying also to get some accreditations.
Hello. We are not really looking at accreditation right now. As we won the Bruges Summer School, it's not the same for the Alsace Summer School to become permanent. And we will start in 2026 to do a 6-month program. Maybe before that time, but I mean, that's going to be a first try, because we have students asking to come to Bruges for a year program, which is not ready yet, but so it will take time. And we want to get accreditation at that point, if it's necessary, because students who apply to the summer school, they don't ask for accreditation right now. So if at some point we think it's relevant, we will work on that. But I would say, and that's the case for many countries, it's very, very difficult to get accreditation as a private summer school. I mean, we are La Table Ronde d'Architecture, who is hosting the summer school, is a non-profit association, but it's quite complicated. So that's also why we are starting to have partnership with the city where the summer school is host, so that they are really involved within the education projects, and they will be wishing to help us more than in the future.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Mario has an interesting point to say, if we can allow her, about Erasmus.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for an interesting program and interesting speeches. I'm based in Finland, and I'd very much like to promote all these summer school opportunities and university programs to anyone in Finland, any student in Finland wishing to join. And I'd also like to contribute to finding connections in Finland, or locations or organizations or universities in Finland who could participate in these programs. So I'm just thinking at least many of the Finnish universities have or allow their students to participate in student exchange in any universities in other countries who also are involved in the Erasmus program. So my question is specifically to Kingston University, but also more generally to any other. But would it be possible for an Erasmus student to join your program, for instance, coming from a Finnish university?
Yeah, I'm actually the coordinator for the department on international stuff, and we have Erasmus agreements with certain schools in Europe that we know very well, that we push, across the board. We have a partnership agreement with Catholic University of America, which has an element which is specific to the classical studios in each. But anyone from any university in the world can apply to the school and simply come and pay the relevant tuition for a semester or a year. The UK works on a year basis, so that's a bit easier, but we can be flexible enough to accommodate an autumn or spring semester. So do get in touch.
Perfect, I'll do that. Thank you.
Yeah, can I just say that obviously that's the actual exchange would be limited to the participating institutions, wouldn't it, Timothy? But you can set up, it takes probably a year lead time or so, but obviously subject to Timothy say so, you can set up a partnership arrangement. So
we have guest students. So we had 2 from Nebraska last year. We have no exchange with Nebraska. They simply asked to come and join us and paid the fee, and so it doesn't need to be a fully set up exchange. But it is very complicated, and Adam mentioned earlier how complex it can be across Europe. The UK system is different to the American one. It's different to the European one. The American one is closer to much of the world. The European one is pretty much the same across the whole of Europe. So we are an outlier, which is slightly tricky, but not overwhelmingly so.
Well, in Britain, unfortunately, we have to get used to being an outlier after Brexit, but let's not go there.
Yeah. But ARB, Timothy, have changed their criteria now in the sense that you don't necessarily have to do it through a prescribed institution. And they judge you rather more like an American way on the final outcome of your presentation to them. So from that point of view, that opens a lot of possibilities, and even possibilities of conversion courses where you can take people who have done geography or some other course as an undergraduate and then take them through the conversion course to go into architecture. So there's a lot more flexibility that's become available, which wasn't there before.
And I think with those answers, we are slightly going towards ambitions and plans from growth or diversification. So we would like to know from all the schools what are their plans and how they want to expand their target eventually.
I might jump in there. So also related to accreditation, in the Australian experience, the Enduring Design Masterclass, we've had a lot of success pursuing accreditation by working within the existing university environment. We run it through the University of Queensland as a subject at that university. It's one of our leading universities and leading architecture schools. Based on the success of that program since 2020, we're now expanding the program from the summer school model to span a full semester. So this will be a core part of our students' Master of Architecture, equivalent to Part 2 in the United Kingdom. And we found a lot of success working within that environment. Further point on accreditation, it's actually a tricky issue. Myself and many other panelists here today are on the INTBAU Education Committee, and it's a subject we've reviewed fairly thoroughly in our discussions. Suffice to say, not everyone wants to pursue accreditation. There's sort of a trade-off. Obviously, accreditation provides a great deal of legitimacy and value to the already sort of fantastic educational offerings of the schools, but it also comes with it inevitably diminishes the freedom and the independence of the summer schools from that sort of formal mainstream education pathway. But everyone has expressed that they want accreditation as an option in the hopes that one day we can perhaps combine forces and create that sort of Kingston model mainstream university course in traditional architecture. So we're currently investigating that. We're commissioning a report into previous experiences of accreditation, and don't be surprised if I'll be in touch with every panelist here today to ask your thoughts on that. And we'll be looking at this question in depth and trying to provide that option and pathway to summer schools around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I say something, Mark?
Go right ahead.
I was going to say the strength, I think, of a lot of the summer schools is that they are very practical. I mean, a lot of them, as we saw in the presentations, they're involved with going around, looking at buildings, exploring what is urbanism and the different types of urbanism that you get, looking at crafts and how to build and different ways of doing this. And it's to some extent, the big issue in education is, do you spend 5 years just learning all about it on paper, or should you spend more time doing the practical elements, learning the other parts of architecture, which apart from design and that are so important. I mean, one of the things that that is wrong, I think, with, forget about whether you're talking about traditional or modernist architecture, but a lot of people come out of schools of architecture and need to be taught so much in the practices, because the schools of architecture only cover one half of the curriculum. And some of them don't even cover that because they don't even deal with history or the more academic elements either. And it's just totally studio based. The reality is architecture is a very wide thing. It involves many subjects. It involves so much that it's probably, having a full-time academic course is not necessarily the best way to teach it, I think I'm saying.
Well, John, I don't know if you and Giorgio have been rehearsing beforehand, but that's actually a very brilliant introduction to the next section on sort of more focused on craft, which Giorgio is going to introduce. But before we let Giorgio free on that, is there any kind of vital comment coming from anyone in the audience about the previous topic before we move on to the craft that we kind of can't go without? If not, we'll move on to the next section. Ali Reza, is that you there? Yeah, so do unmute. Ali Reza, if you unmute, then we'll be able to hear you.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, really, it's an open question, whether accreditation should really be the ultimate goal. I think the message coming through from a lot of summer school and the proliferation of the summer schools, I mean, compared to 10, 15 years ago, and, you know, looking at the list of the schools here, which I'm glad to say the majority of INTBAU led, is the message coming from the grassroots, if you like, is that it's the variety of experience, it's learning the other as part of a holistic education that's more important than necessarily getting accreditation. I think maybe I'm not so sure. Maybe accreditation is ultimately something that will just come, rather than trying to shoehorn classical education or teaching of classical architecture, which is so diverse in itself. You know, you go from Mexico to what Alejandro is doing in North Africa, for instance, in reconstruction, to what's happening in other parts of the world now, Qatar, etc., with INTBAU. Why do we need to necessarily try and go for accreditation? Why don't we just go for proliferation of what we do, what we teach? And then at some stage, there'll be critical mass. There'll be such a critical mass that accreditation will come through by itself. When we send students to Timothy, or people who come to do part 2 with us after having studied degrees somewhere else, who haven't worked in a classical idiom or any kind of traditional architecture, who become interested through working in a year out, who come just out of curiosity and then they want to pursue it, we'll send them to Timothy. I think there's probably enough to fill his course if we all try it, rather than trying to take summer schools through a torturous route to get accreditation.
You are very right, and I think this is taking us to another topic that we missed, which is ambitions and growth. Because as you said, instead of jumping directly to accreditation, if there is a organic growth of those schools and the diversification and a power which is growing, probably accreditation will be the next normal step. So can we touch a bit on ambitions and each school plans of growth and diversification? Who can start? I think Frank from Cambridge left.
Well, yeah.
No, I'm still
here, but I don't think Frank's here. But I think I've covered that to do with the CSDA. So there's not much more I can say. Apart from actually agree to some extent with Ali. But having said that, you still also need accreditation, because you do have to measure who is an architect at the end of the day, and what the whole architectural qualification and what constitutes an architect still needs to be defined. It needs to be defined through the lens of being a traditional or classical architect, which is different to one as a modernist architect. So it just doesn't carry through. You need to have something which says, you know, you can't just do lots of craft and do one element of it only, and then go around pretending you're an architect. It's got to somehow, you've got to have some way of defining what the total objective is, and what skills you need to pull together, and what skill sets you have to have and be good at to actually call yourself an architect.
Can I make one point here, both to John and Ali, and this discussion, is I think it does depend whether you're talking about domestic architecture, residential architecture, private architecture, and private clients, or civic, because I mean, there's someone like Ben Pentreath, who, you know, we had a tag event earlier with Ben speaking, and you know, partly the event was celebrating his achievements, and he, you know, got the Treehouse Prize, and he has a practice around 30 or 40 people, whatever it is, and he didn't qualify as an architect, and yet, of course, I would think of him as an architect, and I'm sure many of us here would also think of Ben as an architect. So, but the question is that I hesitate to generalize, but I imagine that most of his work come from private clients who are sufficiently independent to think, well, I want that kind of architecture. I don't mind if this person is not accredited. I mean, he's got, you know, there's architects within his company and so on, and so that's fine. But if you are going to think about public buildings and commissions from institutions, they are rather unlikely to go with an architect that is not who is not accredited. So there's a lot of things. While hearing what everyone said, and I'm definitely with Ali on many of the principles, a lot of people will just, you know, plow their own furrow and go for it, and they can be successful. There won't be barriers to them necessarily, but at the same time, other people need that, or other, you know, if we're going to really penetrate deeply, we may need more institutional support, and that may need accreditation. So, you know, we know we've got to sort of move forward on different fronts, essentially, I think.
Agreed.
Vincent, can we hear something about Utrecht plans of diversification?
I believe
Excuse me,
Vincent.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Or Ruben?
Okay. Yeah, well, I will introduce to prepare a little bit. Well, diversification, we have many ideas, but it's a matter of resources, since we are still doing pro bono work, essentially. Well, it's not just learning, it's also building a network, which we already discussed. We have some ideas, like a follow-up year. So second year summer school, this is still an idea, as well as some spin-offs or seedlings, local initiatives, also still an idea. Another idea is trying to bridge the gap between current construction, say mainstream construction practice, and craft, which in our country is concentrated in heritage and conservations, and these worlds are very wide apart, as many know. That's still an idea. However, there's another thing which is already in the far stage, and I want to give the microphone to Ruben for that.
Yes, thank you, Vincent. Yeah, so Joseph Jutras, who's also the chair of our summer school, actually started this project to kind of start a non-accredited one-year academy. Yeah, so it will also happen in Utrecht, and it's basically so a longer summer school program, so stretch over the whole year. Of course, the only problem is that it's costly because it is not accredited, and it's a small group of students, so we can't offer it for the same extremely low price as the summer school. But yeah, we're now in the stages of, well, we have kind of opened the website, open for applications. And the plan is to see if we can get to 10 applicants. If that is the case, then we can, go to the next step and really fill everything in. But yeah, it's really out of need for a program that really, fills this need within the Netherlands. And we're open for all European students, but because we can't get accredited, it's also hard to get American students because you can't get a visa without it. So there are some challenges, and of course the high price of this course is also something we struggle a bit with, because on the one hand we would like to have it all as cheap as possible. On the other hand, we need to pay, of course, for a nice location, quite central if possible, teachers, rent, everything. So this is a project in development. You can find it on the Dutch INTBAU website under Academy in the tab on the top right. And I can actually put a link in the chat, and I advise to take a short look at it. And perhaps if anyone has advice or ideas, we're always open to think about that. So please let me know if you have any advice for this. But I think if it works, it would be a nice extra addition to the offerings.
Yes, and I think now we can move forward to the next topic, which was mentioned by now several times. It's the link in between heritage and new build, because although we should work together in this direction, there is a gap in between those two fields, new build in traditional style and conservation architecture. And the idea is that conservation projects and the recording of the traditional buildings can contribute to regenerate traditional practices that have been lost, especially because many crafts have been lost and they remain documented only in historic buildings. It's a lot of knowledge embedded in historic buildings, which are teaching us not only about building techniques, but also about skillful and sustainable use of local materials. And something more new, as we tend to lose it, a profound human and cultural dimension of practicing traditional crafts, which creates a powerful bond in between the craftsmen and the material. And with this, I would like to invite Nadia and Alejandro and others who have their schools much more based on crafts to present the role of the skilled craftsman and also the importance of hand-on training of the architects, because the architect should really know how to apply this, what to ask from the builders, and to feel the materials after all. Nadia?
Yes,
Yes. Tiffany, think this is great.
If you allow me, I will just go back quickly to the previous question about plans of expansion, because
very good.
Yes, well, very quick, because it's quite important for us. We have this objective of founding a permanent institution. In how many years we don't know, but I'm sure we will manage it. And this institution will gather teachers coming from, of course, architecture backgrounds, but also craftsmen, to which we are of great importance, and historians, and students might also touch upon philosophy, because we think that in order to be complete beings and able to think and build properly in this world, they need all these backgrounds together to be taught proper architecture. And crafts is, of course, essential to our teaching, and we have come to discover with the time that our students, they were, of course, they needed to grow, but they also needed to understand why they would choose that particular architecture form. Why would Bruges, for instance, be a city of bricks, and why would Gothic style would be built that way? Because of the materials, because of the craft technique, and it all comes down to that. So they actually badly need this knowledge to be able to build properly. and to understand themselves why they are doing this, that it's not only a matter of aesthetics, but also of practical thinking and of knowing the materials and the region. So I don't know if you want to add something.
No, and so it's exactly why we are like having part of the summer school. It's called the Summer School of Architecture and Craft. So part of the summer school is really dedicated to the crafts, and mostly craft associated to the structure of architecture. So woodwork, stonework, brickwork, and so the students they will be involved with those crafts during the summer school. And so they are able to draw things well also, so that they are able to detail things also properly. And that, you know, we are not losing this relation with the builders. You know, an architect is there to, as a chef d'orchestre, as a, you know, he gives like the notes, the music notes, but then we need people who are able to make the sounds. So the builders and the craftsmen are very important, and it's very good if the relationship between all those actors also works well. And so it's also that we are teaching during the summer school to the students is how practically how the profession is working. If you want to work traditionally with the traditional methods, with biosourced materials, with local materials, with craftsmen, how do you work with that, and how do you build that way? So that's really like and so that's also linked to what you were saying about heritage, because of course for us we do not make any distinction between heritage and traditional architecture. We are part of the same, you know, the same flow, and so we are learning from the past, taking all the good of the past and making sure that what we will build for the present and for the future will last, will be loved, will be built also with love, with measure. And so that's all the things that we are teaching during the summer school. But I think craft should really be part of the architecture education. And that's also the apprenticeship is also something that we want to develop when the school became permanent, so that the students that come to the summer school are not only architecture students who want to become architect, but also young, so high school students or university or any age people who want to come and learn about the art of building in general, and then choose where they want to go. If they want to become a carpenter, if they want to be an architect, but at least they have a general background on the art of drawing, the art of building, and how to apply this to new construction and old building also.
Can I make a point here? Anyone hear me? I absolutely follow what Nadia is saying, but I just want to highlight one particular danger. In architecture schools in Britain, when people express an interest in traditional architecture, they said, well, why don't you go into conservation? So somehow this is a sort of, it's distinguished. The idea that conservation is nothing to do with new architecture. Of course, all traditional architecture has to relate to the past, otherwise it wouldn't be traditional architecture. That's a sort of an unavoidable fact. But one of the problems we've had with INTBAU is that people identified, oh, you're a conservation organization. They see it as absolutely distinct from new building. So one thing I have to be very, very careful about is that they constantly make, as a tradition, to constantly make the connection between doing something relating to tradition, which of course you relate to the past, but that takes you into the future and is good for building new buildings. It's a danger we've experienced for a very long time. I think Nadia's point is that actually it needs to take you into the future. And a lot of people end up concentrating just on restoring past buildings, which is all very good. I highlight that as a danger.
That's
very good point, Bob. Yeah, so that's very true.
And
so
we should go forward to reach visibility and impact, probably, because this is also very important.
I could come in on this one.
And
it's me, Robert from Great Streets. Well, I think this is an area that Create Streets has been working on for a long time, because I think it's very, very important that we think about architecture, because obviously there is this huge pent-up demand for the way buildings look, and the way buildings look is such an important part of the experience of our streets and our cities, and many young people very much want to design that way. But I think those of us professionals that work as Create Streets does on various master plans and street design, urban design issues, we know that one of the huge blockers to actually designing the sort of places that we really want to see are all these nitty-gritty planning issues, highways issues, politicians, people who don't necessarily themselves understand why things can't be built the way that they are. So far, summer school, we've been very specifically kind of targeting planning officials, highways officials, local politicians, developers, house builders, because as I say, it's not just the buildings, the way the buildings look, that is so important to tackle, but we really do need to tackle the policy and the kind of the boring background stuff that actually prevents us day to day from building the kind of places we want to see. And we were quite happy in our summer school that we did manage to entice quite a lot of people from various backgrounds, because a lot of people maybe don't quite understand what some of these blockers are to building the sort of places we want to see. So yeah, I think it is very, very important that we target architects and everybody else, because a lot of people want to see better cities and better buildings, better neighborhoods built, but there are many, many different reasons why it's not happening right now.
And I think Ruben and Michael Diamant have a lot to say about this as well, and Bart.
Yes,
Ruben?
of course.
Or which?
Yeah.
Who's speaking now? I can't see.
Mike, I could say something.
Okay, fantastic.
Good evening, and
Good
thank you very much for this very important event. Well, when it comes to spreading to ordinary people, the uprising movement is really going very well now, especially in Europe. I think there is one now in every nation in Europe, basically, there is an uprising movement. And what this movement does, it exposes more people, ordinary people that don't have architecture as a main interest, for the idea that you can build new traditional architecture. Because still, 99% of ordinary people don't know that you can build classical today. So that's, we have to expose them for the idea, and we do that excellently with the uprising movement. But to expand this further, you have to expand to TikTok and other types of social media, more short videos, and do it in a way that is attractive for people, as again, people that don't have architecture as a main interest. We succeeded with this very well now lately in Sweden. There was a film team, and they created some kind of Gordon Ramsay-like videos with me where I trashed modernist areas, and it went viral, and I think 180,000 views or something, which is quite much in a country of 10 million. So more of the same and more exposure in social media, talk about it, show examples of actually built new traditional architecture, and show it to more people, and continue this uprising movement that has been so successful, and help it spread to even more countries. That's one way to make this subject wider and more acknowledged by a wider audience, I think.
Yeah. Can I add something to that?
Right. Yes, do.
Yeah, so I think, I agree with what Michael says. I think another point is, well, what I'm doing is, of course, with videos on social media, as kind of, I'm not sure, if there's a lot of other creators like me. I mean, you have people like, not just bikes, strong towns, but I think it's extremely important for more people, to do what I'm doing, for example, kind of reporters, almost, people who make these films and just, share them. but this is quite hard because, of course, it takes a lot of time, it takes effort, and yeah, you need to be able to kind of market this. So I think it's also maybe a good idea to look at, yeah, perhaps ways of how people with firms or with summer schools themselves can, yeah, motivate or yeah, find people who can create this kind of content. Because what I've seen is that there is an enormous appetite for our topic, what we're doing, but it needs to be communicated in a way that a wide audience can understand it, and that it's yeah, it needs to be suitable for a wide audience. And I think once yeah, that works, you see like how many people are interested in this, and I get a lot of questions, and yeah, it was really interesting to see, for example, that I was able to direct a lot of traffic towards the architectural uprisings, but I can't do everything by myself with only one channel. I think we need more channels. I think we need more people doing what I'm doing, but maybe also in different ways. And I think the architecture uprising is one very effective way of doing that, because there's a lot of energy there. There's a lot of people yeah, with similar skill sets, trying to bring forward our arguments on the internet via social media, which is basically what I'm doing. I'm just struggling with the question of how, yeah, how we can, let's say, have someone else have a huge reach, because I think we need that. Because if we are able to do that, I think we can, yeah, we can reach so many people. But about the topic of education in general, I'm also working on, for example, a video with which I am, with which I hope to send a lot of traffic to summer schools, but also to mobilize students, let's say. Kind of what I did with the uprising video, I want to do the same for education. But there's so many programs and people I want to talk to for that video and interview that I fear it might be like a 30-40 minute video if I don't watch out.
Yes.
But I think that would be a really great step to bring large attention to the education which we're doing. And I think, yeah.
And I understand Bart is helping you as well.
Sorry?
Understand Bart is helping you as well to do this, so
Yeah.
we can conclude on this visibility.
Georgia, just before conclude on it, can I just ask other people, well, make this a comment and a question, because Create Streets has achieved quite a lot of mileage. I think Robert was really great when he mentioned the word policy, because what you guys now, when I say you guys, I mean Michael and Ruben and probably Bart, are talking about, let's say, a popular, you know, the very notion of architecture uprising obviously is a popular bottom-up type of effect. But the thing is also it needs to come top-down from policy. And the problem is that after the policy is very, very slow, there's this big inertia period. So finally, some of the precepts in the Venice Charter, which are, you know, anathema to anyone with a brain, finally gets around to policy. And then people in Britain have, you know, policies they shouldn't do. They're not really allowed to, but they do it all the same to say, you know, we have to have new architecture that is of our time. It can't be pastiche and so on. So one of the tools that Create Streets have used by commissioning other people is this visual preference survey, which is a way of actually numerically being able to show a politician, look, X number of people prefer a traditional look as opposed to the modernist look. So I just wanted you guys, so by which I mean you three on the screen, Michael and Ruben and Bart, you know, do you use that technique as well, or not? Because that's, you know, if you're having a TikTok 20-second video or a 50-second video, that can include a flash of a visual service provider, which, you know, hits people in the eye. So I just wondered about that.
Well, I can say that the uprising helped to give politicians a backbone, at least here in Sweden. I don't know about the other countries, but I can speak for Sweden. Because as soon as politicians have had an opinion about architecture, they have been labeled far right, Nazi, you know, whatever. But now, with the uprising, they know that they have a backbone, and they know that they can say, how to say, they can have opinions about architecture. They have even decided, you know, they can overrule the municipality bureaucrats about decisions about, you know, style and such. And they have done that, and they dare to do that now thanks to the uprising, because they know that there is discontent, and they know that they can do this now without being labeled, and that they have support from the general public in doing this, that they have a democratic mandate to decide about architecture. So it has worked, and I can tell you now, I also have a very recent success here in Sweden. Thanks to this viral TikTok videos I mentioned you, I will have a meeting now in the end of this month with Swedish Parliament, the current government, and they want to know why Swedish architecture is so bad and what they can do about it. So yes, you know, just by, you know, creating a public fuss, public debate, and showing, you know, options from other countries, we give politicians a backbone, so they themselves dare to question and ask, why is architecture so bad, and what can I do about it?
Right. Well, thank you. Sorry for that delay to Bart, and sorry to Georgia as well. So over to Bart.
All good. Yeah, actually, Michael and Ruben expanded a lot on what I would probably have said. And in addition to that, I just want to give you 5 formats that you can use as someone who is advertising for a summer school or for your practice in any way. And there are a couple of very successful formats that we've found within the Uprising and other initiatives. First, I would mention that don't underestimate traditional media. Like the traditional TV, newspapers, radio, all this kind of stuff is very, very powerful, actually. I'm just giving you the example of Berlin, which is right behind me here in this beautiful green screen environment. We had this foundation that we started for the old town of Berlin, and we just produced 5 different 3D renderings of how the old town would look like if it had survived World War II. And this was basically spending 3,000 euros on those renderings and then giving it to the media, sending it to the TV stations and newspapers and etc., and make them report about it. And we had a huge flash of people reporting about it. It was all over the media in all of Germany. Everyone was talking about it. We've got a 250,000 in donations to set up events and set up different things. So with just investing a bit of money into something visual and giving it to the media, you can make a huge impact and get a lot of attention. And also as you, Mark, experience with the Bath rugby stadium, for example, that was very powerful, very beautiful renderings of that project. And yeah, just having a conversation about something that you can actually look at. That's the first thing I want to mention. Talk to the media. Second format is really the before and after pictures.
All right.
I see so many architecture profiles on Instagram and Facebook, and they are so honestly so boring and bland. And sometimes they have the most beautiful buildings and things they could show, where they could show the transformation, where there was nothing before, like a green lawn or an ugly brown side or something, or even a dilapidated concrete building, and then show this, what it was before, and show what it was like after. Or show, like, when you have students of a former year, your alumni, what the site that they designed for looks like now, and what they designed as an alternative for it. Just show the contrast of those two things, and the post will explode on social media. You get a lot of exposure, and no one does that. Only we in the uprising do it, and I think everyone should do it. Yeah. Third thing is get on podcasts. Talk to people who have podcasts. People who are in your region, in your field, but also outside of your field. Just reach out to them. Ask them if they ever talk to an architect in their podcast, if they're interested in a different perspective. Like 99% of podcast hosts are so glad if someone actually reaches out to them who could be interesting, because they're constantly looking for interesting guests. And the fourth thing I want to mention is whenever you go through a city, through your place, through your street, or to your commute to work, look around. Is there a beautiful building, and very close to it, is there an ugly building? And just do exactly that. Film it or photograph it and show the difference. Just show, okay, so this is what we got and this is what we get now. You know, like showing the contrast. It's really, really powerful. And you can upload that on Instagram, on Facebook, wherever. Works better on Instagram, honestly. And just tell people, okay, what do you want to design as an architect? Feel more drawn to this first one, to the beautiful one, then join us. Join the summer school. And the fifth thing is, I definitely want to highlight here is dare to reach out to local enterprises, to even the big ones, to the construction industry, to developers. Tell them that you have an alternative for them to market themselves as the heroes of a new era, of changing a paradigm, of changing the world with more sustainable buildings. Whatever it is that kind of scratches their ego a bit, where they feel, oh, wow, this is really interesting. I can be like on the forefront of something, the pioneer. And then you get the money. Honestly, we were just talking to 5 different potential sponsors here in Berlin, and they all gave us money. And it was a lot of money. And I think that's possible for our cause, definitely. And we're not even talking about an academy or something here. We're talking about, yeah, like a fantasy project of rebuilding the old town of Berlin. So I think it's totally possible because it's tangible. For example, we have Ralf Schmitz, who is a very prolific developer from Berlin, who is giving scholarships to students of new classical architecture in Bruges. And we can have many more of that. Just ask like local developers or big developers, hey, would you be interested in supporting young students learning something totally different and being thankful to you for all their life? Okay, sounds cool. Just 2,000 euros. That's peanuts. Yeah,
fantastic. I think that's a lovely note to have you guys on the end of that at this point, because we must be drawing to the end, and it's sort of linking up. Yeah, because I'm just trying to, Georgia and I are just trying to do things telepathically at this point. And we feel that there's recruitment is sort of very linked to what you're talking about, because, you know, visibility to recruitment. And that's all of also, I mean, you know, thinking of Timothy's point earlier about, you know, just a few more for Kingston would really change things there, and so on. So can we perhaps have that as the sort of final issue, and maybe, you know, try and keep it as brief as we can. Anyone who wants to chip in, or you guys, while you're here, sort of, you've obviously got a feel for this as well. So perhaps one of you.
Vincent has something prepared about this, and I would like to let him say, because it's very uplifting and a very good ending of this.
I hope so. I hope so. So I will thank you. And thank you all for all your very good points. I prepared a little bit on paper, so I'll try to read through it as quickly as I can. But the title of this piece is how do we attract the best and the brightest, which may be misleading because I think we probably already do that. But it's a follow-up of the previously discussed. How do we make our causes and programs more appealing to open-minded young people who do not necessarily gravitate towards traditional architectural and urban design? People that, for example, fall for the appeal of spectacular but ridiculous modernism, ? So for this, I was inspired by a talk that Andres Duani did about 2 years ago. I'm sure you're all familiar with Andres and the kind of pivotal figure he is in for our movement. But he did a passionate and rather peppered plea at the other TAC, the Traditional Architecture Gathering, organized by Nir Boras. This can be it's a video. It's actually on YouTube. Whilst I think that he painted quite a dire and black and white picture, as in modernism versus traditionalism, of what I think is actually a more fluid reality, I do think that he made many very valid points, which all were made with the following question in mind: how do we attract the best and the brightest? Or in other words, what do you bring the young folks who are open-minded? How to get them excited? How do we steal bright minds from the appeal of often spectacular but ridiculous modernism, or from the initiatives of the innovative and smart construction industry? Is promising beauty and sustainability enough for young people to notice us? As I said, it's a bit black and white, but I think they are very valid questions. And to better succeed, I personally think that we should somehow try to better compete with the appeal of modernist spectacle and smart solutions. I think that in order to counter that appeal, we perhaps should focus on the appeal of what I like to call daring invention, to explore new territory with respect to the old, to invent with respect and reference to history and the obvious answers that traditional building methods give, but not rule out, just to name an example, certain popular modernist design concepts. For example, putting the Renaissance orders on the highest pedestal, definitely a pun intended, as a kind of end stage, does perhaps not light the fires of those who are excited by novelty. From a personal standpoint, of course, I don't mean that we shouldn't learn the Renaissance orders. I would actually recommend anyone to learn them by heart. So we should perhaps think about refining our methods of presentation and appeal to get more young people excited for our causes. Of course, without resorting to meaningless rhetoric, which is such commonplace nowadays. How modernism is presented and appeals to young designers works well, apparently, and is worth taking note of. How do we engage with what could be called common culture? To resort to a kind of elitism can be as appealing as it can be off-putting, I think. Just as an example, a hero of mine, and I'm sure of many others, someone who pushed boundaries, I'd like to take architect Jozef Plečnik, I hope I'm saying that right, as an example. So he understood and mastered all of the fields which our summer schools cover, namely the academic, the idiomatic, and the vernacular in architecture, urbanism, and construction. Yet, he pushed the boundaries in all of these fields as far as he could, sometimes in outrageous manner. Some ambitious young people want to do outrageous things, and that's exactly the appeal of out-of-control modernism, the ability to take risks and fail. So I'm definitely not saying that one should take unnecessary risks. I just resonate with the idea that in order to attract a wider young audience, we could perhaps be more daring in our mission. So I'd like to end with coming back to what I like to call daring inventions. How do we inspire students to rise above our teachings? Or as Andres puts it, quote, "The mission of the young is not Vitruvius, but what Vitruvius would have done," end quote. So that's what I wanted to bring, as I think these things are worth talking about for our summer schools, as they are often a starting point for further education in our fields. So I hope that these ideas inspire. Regardless, I'm absolutely certain that there will be outspoken opinions on what I just talked about. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mark?
Oh, me. Well, actually, the trouble, Vincent, is that if we get into this kind of discussion, we all have to go to the pub. And we can't do that. We can't do that. This is the limitation of an online. So I think we have to put that one off until hopefully we can get in a room or a space together, hopefully one of these summer schools or a new summer school that is also going to join the club. And so I'll look forward to that. But I think at this stage, we're in danger of hitting the 2-hour mark. And I saw, to my amazement, only a few minutes ago, that we're now at 65. So we've only dropped off from 70 to 65 in almost.
Don't worry about the 2 hours, because I made it 3 hours. So we can go on.
Well, this is for the fanatics. I'm hungry. But anyway, so what I was just going to say is, I think at this point we have a slot for some Illuminati. As I'm speaking from Italy at the moment, as you can see, there's a sort of Italian kind of fresco thing behind. Illuminati and alumni. Maybe if there's anyone who hasn't had a sort of like formal slot to speak, we have, I don't know if Adiresa's still there, if Tiffany's there, if Lucian's there, Jonathan Wetherill, if he's there. If any of these people who we've asked to, join us have actually got something to say, or an alumnus of one of these summer schools, would be really good to hear from them, what they think. And there are a small category of people who have been a student on one of these programs and have since done some teaching. So any of these people do come in. So Tiffany's waving there. So Tiffany, unmute if you're muted.
I think I'm unmuted, but I think you've heard a lot of the people that have actually been teaching on some of these summer schools. But I saw that Jack Hanscom is on, and he's writing a bunch at the moment. And not to put him on the spot, but I think he might be a good ambassador for some of these summer programs, because he attended both the Cambridge and Inglesburg when it first began. So I was wondering if Jack might be willing to share maybe a little bit of his experience, as you've heard a lot from us. Is Jack around, or did he dip out? Oh, there he is.
Hello, Jack.
Would you mind speaking about some of the summer schools and your experience, wisdom, perhaps?
Oh wow. Yeah, I mean they've both been. So I attended both the Englesburg 2017, I believe, and the CSCA 2021, and they were honestly both incredible moments in my life, formative, most definitely. Yeah, and I suppose I've just been trying to chase that ever since. But yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Well,
I'm trying to get there still.
Yeah, I was going to say that from my experience, there has been, as John mentioned, frustration over what to do next after attending some of these summer schools. So I know we pushed you to talk to Tim Smith.
Yeah.
And do the MArch, and obviously I'm trying to tempt you to do the MArch at Notre Dame, and we have had at least 3 apply to the MArch at Notre Dame following Cambridge program. So that's been a success, and I know that Notre Dame will be launching its own summer school in Berlin, so that's sort of in tow as well. But do you have any suggestions in terms of how we might broaden opportunities post summer schools from your side, from a student's point of view?
Well, I mean, that's exactly my issue. I suppose I just becoming more engaged with the networks would be a first port of call, but I don't know. I'm afraid that's where I'm at a loss myself.
Perhaps others can chime in terms of other opportunities that Jack might explore post his summer school affiliation.
Can I jump in there? I did Robert Adams' Oxford course. But kind of actually to pick up on what Jack was talking about, it's something that I'm keen for TAG to do, is improve connections between students and professionals. And it's I haven't actually had the chance to fully propose it yet, but I think a good start would be any student TAG member to be given a mentor who's a fully qualified professional with a bit of a structure in place to help them either through their study or then after their study. Because I think if we have this great organization that brings in students, but we need to give them clear means and tools to navigate study, whether you are just at a university or doing some of these summer schools, but also, you know, when you dropped out the other side of education, you know, loads of people here run great practices, and I'm sure are looking for budding, you know, assistants and support staff. So I think if we can help, you know, if you know, for example, if Jack comes along to a TAG event, that he has someone that he can immediately talk to, or whoever joins, and then I think that will also, you know, if you've got someone in a university or you know who's you know, part of TAG and is doing a little bit of work experience with, you know, whoever it may be, but a major practice, they're gonna, all their, you know, friends are going to be thinking, wow, this is quite an impressive thing to be part of. So I think it's helping to improve the connections between the young people and the older people. Quite literally, I think we need to put people in touch and form those close direct links.
Thank you very much, Edward. Absolutely. And just by the way, just one of the chats that just come in, was it's very difficult to keep on top of all the conversations and the chats, but we've been talking about Architecture Uprising, and Lucien Stard has just put in there a message talking about an event on March the 20th, 5:30 Eastern time, with including Michael and Ruben from here, and Mario as well, Nadia. Well, lots, basically, many people here and some beyond, and also Victoria, who I haven't actually, Victoria hopefully is here today, Schultz-Dober. So hopefully that's a useful thing in the chats there. So thank you, Lucien, for that. And sorry, that's rather interrupted the flow. But Edward, yeah, it's a very good point about the mentors and the mentees, and we will pick that up in TAG. So thanks for that.
Alireza, you wanted to say something? Oh, there are so many hands, but please.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. Just to respond to Edward, we, as a practice, and I'm sure a lot of other practices, look for talent all the time. We have difficulty finding people. At the moment in the UK, there's a shortage. And whoever pays the more money, and we're even poaching staff from, we're not, but other companies are poaching staff from each other, the traditional practices, because there isn't enough people around. But it needs to be done through a structure. The Princess Foundation, I know Ben is there, used to run a very good program where there would be graduate fellows who would be working and studying at the same time in practice. And I think the apprenticeship scheme that John is pursuing with Cambridge is something that has legs, and I think that will help the practices, and also it will help those who come out of the summer school system in order to find a base which to further develop their interest. What is really encouraging, though, apart from all these tactics, I mean, you know, whether we go down the social media route to try to compete with the funny cats and the dogs on social media to get more likes or more hits, whether it's about monetization of whatever picture you can put on social media, I think navigating all of those changes all the time. It changes with the seasons almost. What is really important, and the takeaway from what I've seen today, is actually that this is a very widespread, entrenched, strong, young an unapologetic movement. I think if you were my age, when I was your age now, some years ago, I was always sitting in front of some grumpy old men who were complaining that they're being disenfranchised, and they just wanted a seat at the table. And some, unfortunately, still do complain and grumble. But that is all the negative. What I've seen tonight is extremely positive. We, especially at INTBAU, want to spread the word, spread the message, make it more inclusive, make it more diverse. It's about many classicisms, not just one. It's about many traditions, not just one. It's about many interests. It's about craft. It's about architecture. It's not just about the Renaissance or a Greco-Roman tradition. So I mean, I'm hugely encouraged, especially as TAG has also chosen to host INTBAU. And I think more confluence between organizations is the way to go. Today, it's all about networking. It's all about, holding each other's hand and helping everybody else. And that's the only way to go forward.
Oh, thank you, Ali. Such a nice sentiment there. Brilliant. And you mentioned Ben, and Ben is, at least on my screen, is next to you, so to speak. Ben, you have your hand up.
Sorry, yeah, got my hand up. I don't want to take it off piste, but I have to take it off piste because that's what I do. So just a bit of context in terms of the market. So this relates to the recruitment point. We've been doing quite a bit of work with Commonwealth organizations. So the Commonwealth Association of Planners, Commonwealth Association of Architects, Commonwealth Local Government Forum. And 2 years ago, created a call to action around sustainable urbanization, which in Kigali, at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, got formed into a formal declaration on sustainable urbanization, which you should all Google. So now all Commonwealth leaders, and the Commonwealth represents in the next 30 years, half of the world's projected growth. And the Commonwealth has a kind of common purpose. So there's a potential in what they call the Commonwealth advantage in trying to create tools and techniques to deal with rapid urbanization, natural resource depletion, and climate change around how we deal with these huge conflicting issues. As you know from COP, there's very few links being made between cities and climate change, which is extraordinary given that 3/4 of all emissions come from cities. And I'm just noticing a few strands of sort of evidence around people making the link between cities and climate change. So I'm predicting that in the next couple of years, and we're going to be driving it with the Commonwealth Partners and UN Habitat, we're going to be driving a narrative at the next COP in Samoa. At the end of this year in October, there's going to be a narrative around the link specifically between climate change, cities and climate change, so the built environment, climate change, that will then take the World Urban Forum and the next COP. And I'd only give that context in terms of the way that we view tradition, because more and more students and younger people are seeing tradition as something that offers solutions to our future crisis. And I think that, we can teach because we have a deep-rooted love of the past, and maybe people who are intuitive see tradition as something that feels right for them and healthy and wholesome. But actually, what it represents is a series of thousands of years of embodied intelligence into how to deal with the planet in the right way. And we should be positioning ourselves to adapt traditions towards meeting these challenges at both a local and a global scale. And so all I would say is that we're going to be running 2 workshops in April to bring together collabs. So the point with the links to the summer school programs, just so that I'm not completely off piste, is that one of the models that we think that is best to accelerate tools and techniques towards rapid planning is through, like we used to have urban task forces. You basically bring universities. We had one university, Birmingham University, linked up with Shalal university in Bangladesh. And during COVID, ran a collab where they actually did an on-the-ground community engagement program for a village in Bangladesh from Birmingham because they couldn't get there. And it was incredibly successful. And I think if we begin to look at twinning, 7.4 of the Declaration on Sustainable Urbanization is around twinning of cities and knowledge exchange. And if we could start to look at collab summer programs where we took on climate refugees, like displacement, accelerating traditional methods of passive forms of development, I think we might tap into a new market of people that see tradition as a solution, the adaptation of tradition. I think that phrase is important, the adaptation of tradition. So not discarding technology, but adapting traditions to meet future needs, because there's going to be a doubling of, there's going to be 1.2 billion climate refugees by 2050. There's going to be a doubling of the amount of informal settlements from 1 billion to 2 billion people in the next 30 years. And this is, for want of an ugly phrase, a growth market in terms of what we are interested in, because otherwise we'll end up with the wrong solutions. So sorry if that's a bit out there, but I think this is a market we need to be tapping into.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. No, that's very wise thoughts. And it's interesting to have, we're going from the sort of the craft, sometimes the craft and the nitty gritty of the sort of Flemish brickwork, and then over to these big issues. So it's all part of it. I think this question of, putting forward the idea of adaptation, that tradition adapts. I mean, to us all here, it's obvious, because actually tradition does not exclude adaptation, because of course tradition isn't just copying, which is like a mechanical, relatively dead process, but tradition is living and moving things forward and adapting to contexts and so on. But for most people, tradition has been demoted to a kind of static, conservative thing. So you need to emphasize the adaptability and the progressive future living aspects. So yeah, thank you for that. And where are we going, Georgia, with this? Do you really want to keep us going for 3 hours? I mean,
no, I would like to let those who have the Nadia and Hugh to finish their questions. Nadia, would you like to unmute and ask?
Yes.
And then Hugh, thank you very much for patience.
I just wanted to add that when you were discussing the opportunities of the students who participate to the summer school, our association, so La Table Ronde de l'Architecture, I would really say, with the help of the network of INTBAU, we manage every year, so it's been for 3 years, I mean, since we start, that's every year, if students, it's always like a group of students, if they are asking for an internship or a job, we help them with the following weeks or following months to find a job or to find an internship. They've all found one. So there is like lots of opportunities, not only in architecture office, but also because we know we work a lot with craftsmen, so also with craftsmen within the natural, manufacture of materials. So they also are looking for people with skills in traditional construction methods. So there is lots of opportunity, and I'm sure if there is anyone here that is looking also for help during the year to find his way, he can contact us and we will help with pleasure. But INTBAU is really there also for that. So and we are also trying to get like to link all the summer school together, so that if students are looking for opportunity, there will be maybe some platform and they can ask their question. But INTBAU is a network, so the idea is that the students of the INTBAU summer school, the other summer school also, if they are looking for a job or an internship, we are there to help them.
Thank you very much. Hugh?
Hi, Hugh Calvin here. I just wanted to follow up on what Edward was talking about when you finished the summer school. Just to give you what I did after my summer school, I went to Engelsberg the very first year in 2016. And then actually I set up my own night class in classical architecture the year after. and I ran that for a couple of years in Cork here in Ireland. And I now work for the King's Foundation. I run the All Ireland Heritage Skills Programme. And the reason why I mentioned the program is that it's an interesting model in that it also starts off with a summer school. So there's a 3-week summer school, and that's where the Building Craft program and the All Ireland program and quite a few other students from the Prince's Trust in Australia and lots of other people, they start off there. But what the Irish program and the BCP, the Building Craft program do is they have a series of placements set up after the summer school, so that when you finish the summer school, we actually are in touch with practitioners. I know this is a craft, it isn't quite architecture, but it's kind of a similar model. So we have a network of craftspeople that we can send, or masonry people to masons, to carpenters to carpentry people. So that might be an interesting model to set up, to have something semi kind of formal after the summer school, to have these contacts almost set up and say, this is here if you want to go on. What's different and perhaps maybe more difficult is that it's also fully funded. So we actually have a bursary so that people can go to a stonemason, can go to a stonemasonry company and work for free basically, and that's the way it works. So that's just a model I wanted to maybe explain that might work for summer schools.
Thank you very much. Jonathan, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand, but there it is anyway. No, just very, very briefly, I just wanted to say how interesting and informative this evening has been. And I think one of the fundamental things that seems to have come out of this, which I agree with, is the importance of networking. Obviously, INTBAU is a very important network for all of these summer schools. I mean, there is a huge offer of summer schools throughout Europe. You might think that promoting them would be necessary, but obviously at the moment it doesn't really seem to be. I mean, they are all operating at or over capacity, it seems. If anything, there need to be more of them, but that then brings the even greater need to network and coordinate them in a very, so that they are, working together in a very symbiotic and complete fashion. So far, I think that has been working quite successfully and kind of naturally. I mean, some summer school which starts up will automatically look at what's on offer and try and provide something which is different and alternative and still useful. And there's so much useful learning that you can give to people who are interested in it. So the possibilities are endless, really. In Italy, in particular, we have recently founded and finally made it a legislative association called Architecture and Traditional Architecture and Urbanism, which in Italian is Architettura Urbanistica Tradizionale, as an Italian network of traditional and classical architects. It's sort of in parallel with INTBAU at the moment, because INTBAU in Italy is not as active as it is maybe in other countries. I will actually be meeting next week with Giuseppe Amoroso from INTBAU Italy, and we'll be discussing a sort of strategy for how to go ahead. But fundamental really is the effectiveness of the network, and I think I thank INTBAU and Ali and Ben Bolgar of the foundation really for doing amazing work over the past decades to make this happen. The thing that's really missing is the European Notre Dame. I mean, that's the next step. Obviously, the summer schools aren't alternative to a full traditional or classical architectural education. They are complementary. We have at the moment I have a graduate student who was at the Utrecht summer school 2 years ago. So there are the summer schools do have an effect and bring people into the full architectural education. I've just actually come back from a whole day out in Viterbo, starting at 6 o'clock this morning with the graduate students. So At that, I will close my very modest intervention and let Flavio and others speak. Thank you very much indeed for a very, very informative evening.
We will be brief with the next two interventions.
Yes.
Flavio, please.
Yes. Well, to let you all know as well that this Mexican summer school, which is going to be in June and July, we are also trying to invite students from South America, because it's a whole continent composed of around 40 different countries that we speak the same language. But I think it was bad luck that a lot of independent movements in those countries in South America really took modernism in architecture as a national identity. So we're trying to a bit remind people that a large part of our identity is also coming from the traditional architecture, different styles and buildings. So we're trying to also expand. We are collaborating with INTBAU Cuba, and also in talks with a lot of members from Guatemala, but also from the recently formed INTBAU Costa Rica. But also there's a whole region to grow and expand. Of course, we cannot leave out Asia and Africa, but in South America, we're doing this reach out, this call out. So if you all have some connections in South America, either teaching or practicing, please let us know so we can talk with them. It's difficult because some schools in Argentina or Chile, they have their own schedules, very different from Mexican schedules. So we're trying to coordinate a bit and send the invitations around South America. So thank you.
Bruno Perenia must be in the public. He's from Brazil. You two should get in touch.
Yes, if I may, we are establishing a traditional architecture group in Brazil, which is called IBAT. It's a pioneering project, but we already have some members, some architects. At the moment, we have 57 architects, and we are about to start representing INTBAU in Brazil as well. So I've met Harriet a few times and Antonio as well. So basically, it's a long way. Brazil is a modernist country in many aspects. You know better than me, Brasilia and all those architects that are famous around the world, such as Niemeyer, Lina Bobardi, Lúcio Costa. But we are trying our best to go against the modernists. Brazil was a fantastic country in the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, but the modernists just came and tore everything down. But yeah, it's a long way, and we are starting this project, and hopefully we can make some connections in South America, in North America. Anyway, yeah.
Thank you very much, and I hope you and Flavio will keep in touch. And now let's hear from Alexander. And
yeah, thank you everyone for a wonderful discussion. Just very briefly, if there is anyone in the audience or on the panel who has not already done so, then please do join INTBAU. General membership is absolutely free, and it'll put you in touch with the whole network. If you're interested in some of these opportunities that everyone's talked about, you can get in touch with your local chapter lead and network from there. There's fantastic opportunities all around the world through our network. So please do join. It's totally free. Just head to intbau.org and I'll look for the join button. And I believe the link is in the chat there. So thank you, everyone. Wonderful discussion.
Thank you very much. Mark, unmute your microphone.
Yeah, Alexander, I was just thinking that in terms of not losing any of the information that's in our chats and the various initiatives that have been mentioned, all of these sort of international ones are really beyond TAG UK's sort of reach. Are there possibilities within INTBAU and the website in terms of publicizing, putting up information so that some of this stuff won't be lost? I mean, just say, for example, Lucien's mention of the forthcoming 5 days' time, 20th of March, architecture uprising discussion. Is there a way that that can be appear on an INTBAU website, or is it actually not so easy as that?
Yes. No, yes, indeed. There is an INTBAU education page. If you go to the main page, follow info and then to education, there's a page there with all these INTBAU and INTBAU affiliated summer schools listed. And there's also a latest news and events section as well. So if you just work your way through the INTBAU website, and everything should be there. And yes, we'll certainly be publishing Lucien's.
If anything isn't there, just try and make sure you can capture it.
Yes, certainly.
You're in the morning now, aren't you?
I certainly am. 8:22 a.m.
See, we're going to sleep soon, so you can get going.
Yeah, will do, Mark. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. So the plan was also to take some questions from the public, but I don't see anyone.
They're exhausted.
Yes, I'm sorry, but that's the side effect of going global. So
Georgia, you close. You ask. Bart has raised his hand, but otherwise, I'll leave it to you to close the event.
Oh, yes, Bart has something to say, and then I will close it, announcing the next TAG talk. Please, Bart, very short.
But hold on, Bart, just 1 second. I do want to say a special thank to Georgia because when she closes the event, she's not going to thank herself. So I think
thank you so much.
Allow me to thank Georgia also because, as you can probably gather, she's been really on top of this and organizing everyone and say it's herding some very nice cats. Thank you to Georgia, and over to you, Bart.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Georgia, and everyone
for
participating in this. Really, really amazing. Just quickly, everyone thinking now, okay, what do I make out of all of this? Who is maybe interested in learning more about traditional architecture? Really don't overthink it. Make it a simple decision by your heart, by your intuition. Go on the INTBAU website. It's the easiest thing. Click the link for the education part of the website. You find the specific dates and summer schools there, and just select what you feel drawn to, be it for the region or the kind of program they offer or whatever. Don't be like, oh, do I need to blah, 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 whatever, make a huge path out of it or anything. Just follow what feels natural and fun and experience it. You won't lose anything. You will only gain beautiful experiences and learn a bit about crafts and drawing. And yeah, it's going to be beautiful. I've been attending my first summer school last year, actually. So before that, I was thinking about it so much for years. Should I not, blah, whatever, just do it. You won't regret it. It's fun.
That's very encouraging, and I hope a lot of people will join INTBAU after that, and INTBAU will expand and be even more powerful. So before we are totally closing, I would like to thank you very much all for your presence and to let you know about the next TAG talk, which will be about a fantastic Grade 1 listed manor house in Cotswold. A very interesting mix of conservation and new build, and the presentation will be done by George Lawson, a charter project management surveyor, and he will be joined by two fantastic craftsmen, Philip Gush and Ben Naylor, and this talk will be on the 21st of March. So hopefully you will enjoy this talk as well, and I would like to see you then. And thank you again for staying so long, and have a good night, everybody.